Hello and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I am, of course, your host, Sandy Lowries, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. You can check us out at wb40.com. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are grateful to record this podcast on. In my case, it is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and we would like to pay our respects to their leaders, past, present, and emerging. Today on the podcast, I am very excited to speak to my special guest, Susan Dean. Susan is an extraordinary woman who is the founder of Dean Publishing, and as such, she is very excited and passionate about sharing the stories and expertise of so many people through their books. She is a very heart-centric person and business coach, and it comes through. She's very passionate about everything coming down to the stories of other people. I hope you really enjoy this. If you've ever wanted to publish your own book, this is the podcast for you. Please welcome to the Confessional, Susan Dean. Hello, Susan, and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's actually very lovely to have you. And I know it's taken a little while, but I'm super excited to have you in the confessional. So tell us a little bit about your background before we go in and tell everyone what you do right now, because what you're doing right now is amazing. But I'm super interested to learn about the background that got you here.
Yeah, definitely. I'll try and make it short. Basically, from school, I think, the age that I am, it was like you left school only if you had a job, I wasn't allowed to go on the dole, so it was like secretarial work was it then. So the advantages is I know how to touch type now. I'm not like the kids now where they do it with their thumbs and their fingers. I still don't know how they do it. So that was a good advantage, but it was never what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be a social worker, but it meant 4 years of uni and the old HSC, which it was called in my day. And school was for friends. It wasn't really for learning. So I was like, no, I'm out of here. Went and did a secretarial course, and it wasn't what I wanted. I ended up going back to school and doing a youth worker training, and didn't realize you could, didn't realize at the time there's other paths you can go at to still do what you want. So I became a youth worker, and I worked with a lot of adolescents. They were called in those days the old wards of the state, before the government kind of went, I want the responsibility, I'll just privatize it all. I worked with a lot of, high-risk kids in a stand-up night shift. Had some doozy of some nights, but I learned a lot then about the power of story. And it was all about, I would, share a story. I had a friend that did this, and she, decided that she wanted to choose what she wanted to do in life. And she went and done all these things. And then, those kind of my friend John stories. And then, I'd watch the kids light up. Do you think I could too? Yeah, let's go learn guitar. What else do you want to do? So I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I started to excel, and they started to give me one-on-one with clients. I ended up getting hired by the Young Women's Unit to work with some high-risk kids, but it was all just about conversation. It was all just about having chats and telling stories and asking questions. And at the time, I didn't know what it was, but essentially it was timeline therapy. It was coaching. It was, giving them a compelling future. It was all these things that I didn't know what they were until later on, but by default, it was what I was. I used to have kids come and stay at my house. Mum, can she come and live at my house? So it's always been who I was. So that was my journey before, sort of getting into what I do now.
That's such a powerful story too, Susan, which is why I wanted our listeners to hear that. I think it's quite extraordinary, as you say, the power of story to give hope and to help people to feel they have a better future ahead of them is quite an extraordinary thing.
Yeah. It's the power of story, and giving hope. I think, knowing that even if you're in a bad time now, doesn't mean it's going to be forever.
Absolutely, but also too, what you gave all of these high-risk kids was an opportunity to share their story and to talk about their lives. Yeah, which is really important, because I think that there's a lot of, kids who face trauma who don't always have the opportunity to share those stories in a safe.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times they don't. It's not that they share a lot of their stories. It's that they've got someone to listen to how they feel at the time. Because a part of the project was that they had to be taken to, say, a psychologist. I'm not saying all psychologists are the same, but they would then regress and tell their story, and it wasn't ready for them to tell their story because it was quite traumatic and they didn't want to relive it. So I more talked about, well, where are you now, regardless of the past? What do you want to create for the future? But these young kids, as they get older, that's when we tell our story, because we know that we're carrying this around with us, and unless we share it, unless we open up and share it and heal that, but at the time they're quite young, they wouldn't really like telling about their past or what happened. They more wanted to have a compelling future. Tell me where I can go, because I don't like where I've been. And I think that's a little bit like adults today. What I love about, this is that people are now sharing their stories and their lessons that maybe these younger people can pick up those stories and maybe heal a lot earlier.
That's such a valid point, because as a person who faced trauma as a child, I think you're 100% right. I don't know that you do tell your story then. And it's only sort of now in my later years that I am sharing my truth and my story and getting, my journey out there as well. I think that's so true and such a valid point. So thank you so much. I think, that's actually a very important thing for people to understand as well. So let's talk about what happened beyond youth work, because I want to know, how did you start working with John Gray, obviously the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? How did that come about?
Well, a little bit like I said, I was a youth worker. I was working night shift. I had children then, and it was just becoming to the point where, I was on call and it wasn't working, having young children. So I left as a youth worker, even though, they bring it down to 2 days. And, it got to the point where I was working with pretty high-risk kids and it just wasn't where I was moving to. So I then, and plus it had gone privatised and the whole industry changed so much. You were at quite risk at different times, And I thought, well, I've got a family now. It's not just thinking about me. So I left, and I actually went on a little bit of a tangent of helping, build up a business, which was around jewellery. And I loved it, but I always said in the beginning, hey, it was like a small family business, and I said, I'll help, but it's not where I want to be. I need to be heart-centered. I need to be somewhere where I'm making a difference. And it was funny enough, talk about John Gray. He says, earn some little points by building a fire. But my husband was building a fire, and we'd moved to our beautiful home through some coaching. That's another story, but we'd moved to our beautiful home in the Macedon Ranges, and my husband was building a fire, and he knew I was searching, for something else. And he cut out a little piece of paper that said, do you like helping people? He went, maybe this is for you. And I rang up and found out John Gray had started up a coaching franchise at the time, and license, that you could use his material and you could help coach and be trained by him. And so that's basically where it started. So I started running John Gray's events. I would talk, I would share my story. Then John would be on a video on the screen. Yep, showing my age. It was a VHS cassette player. And we put that in. It's now all digital. So I put that in, and he'd talk and I'd educate relationships. I've been with my childhood sweetheart. We've been married for over 30, going on 33 years. And so, I knew the importance of relationships. So I started to work down there, but it was relationship to yourself. It was relationship to your partner, relationship to everyone. Everything's around relationships. And I'm a true believer, if your relationships are working well, then so do you. And so it was a great path. And then I got to know John, and he would have some great conversations. He was well beyond his years at the time. And that was just the path I went through. And then, of course, I went on and learned so many things that I learned along the way. I'm a trainer's trainer in NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, all those things. But what it just did was make me realize, well, kind of this is what I was doing some of back then as a youth worker without even knowing. You know, it just had a name for it because I was coaching them. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And all of those things. But that's how I got to work with John Gray, and just got back from Vegas actually last week, where I published I published a book with him called Love and Coaching, and that was an honor because he rang me and said, my publisher's gone under. I'm halfway through this book with all my coaches. I know you can help me. Let's make this happen. So, yeah, so that was a great privilege, and just got to spend some, 2-3 days with John 3 weeks ago in Vegas, which was awesome. So it's been a long-term relationship.
How beautiful, and congratulations to you on that new project. That's awesome. But it kind of is a beautiful segue to take us into what you do now, because clearly, intuitively, you've always been a storyteller, and intuitively, you've always been inspired for others to be able to share their stories as well. Tell us all about your extraordinary business, which is, of course, Dean Publishing.
Yes. So as you said, story's always been a part of my life and making a difference, and coaching. And it kind of was all in one, and helping others, to build their business. So I kind of, being in my mid-50s now, back when I sort of started in this industry, I've always been an entrepreneur and always loved getting in and doing things as long as they were meaningful. And so the book publishing came about when I was helping, we were helping a business actually in golf, of all things, and we started to work towards doing a book, bringing all the hole-in-ones into a book. And that was with a partner at the time. And then I was helping another person build up a series which I was a partner in as well. And then it was like, I've always loved story. I used to write poems. You know how people write songs? I used to write songs. I used to be in a little band at school and all those fun things. But it was always about words, the power of words, and writing poetry and all of that. So when it came to, dabbling in the publishing, it was like, what do I want to do? And so when everything fell apart, because, as we all know, in stories in life, we have ups and downs, and I had some pretty downs and pretty much lost everything. And I went, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? And that's a part of the formula that I do, which is design. Design your life, design what you want, because then you'll always do what you love. And I put everything together, and I went, I love watching people's businesses grow. I love story and the power of story. I love books. I love being able to help people get all their knowledge out of their head, because I believe if we do share forward our stories, if we share forward our teachings, together we can change the world. Because people can all afford a $25, $30 book that could change their life. If we share, how did we get over it? What did we do? Maybe those younger people might heal a lot quicker. Maybe they won't wait till later in life. Maybe they might be able to read a certain book that goes, well, gosh, I'm going to start a bit earlier in self-development, or I'm going to get help a little bit earlier. So the power of the books to me is, multifaceted, and watching people thrive by holding a book in their hand that they've put all their heart and soul into, and we as a team have been able to help make it even better. So I decided that not everyone's a writer, but everyone has stories, and everyone has something that they can share from their heart and their knowledge. So why, most authors used to have to be writers. So why do you need to, write a book if you're not really a writer, but you're someone that's got something to share? So I've got a purpose-built
Hello, Sandy here from the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, a platform for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to see the rest of the video, please head over to WB40.com and subscribe to WB40 Extra. By subscribing to WB40 Extra, you're helping to support the hard-won wisdom of incredible women. So thank you. Please remember to like, share and follow.